On this episode of Left Off the Map, I'm heading to one of those very special places on Earth, Saffire on the east coast of Tasmania, to learn a little about beekeeping and taste some honey. Then back in the kitchen, I'm making a pork tenderloin with a coriander Asian dressing. But first, we're starting off with an Italian pork sausage penne. If you want meatballs for dinner and you can't be bothered making the actual meatballs, there's a cheats way around it. Get yourself a good quality sausage, and you can squeeze the meat out of the sausage itself and use that to roll into little meatballs or little polpetti. Take them out, and then you've got your meatballs pre-made. So what I'll do is take the meat out of all these sausages, roll them into meatballs, then we're gonna make a basic, well, these are pork sausages, so I'm gonna use fennel as well as brown onion when I saute the base. So I'll chop my fennel up, chop my onion up, saute that off, and then make a sort of a rich Italian red wine sauce with a little bit of chili. So I'll go through rolling all of these little meatballs. I've rolled my little polpetti, my little meatballs out of my sausage meat, and I'm ready to cook that off. I'm gonna brown the little meatballs first. I'll take those then out of the pan and then add my onion and my fennel and saute that off. Then those pre-cooked meatballs will go back in on top of that, and we'll start building our sauce on top of that. So the dish itself takes, the sauce component of it will take as long as you allow it to take. It can be all over and done within half an hour, or you can let it sit for 3 hours. The longer you allow it to sort of sit and cook and simmer, and you can even put it in the oven, the better or the more intense that flavour is going to be. So allow yourself a good bit of time to make this. That's why dishes like this are mainly better the next day, because I've been able to sit with that heat and really intensify that flavour. So I'll cook these meatballs off, then my onion and my fennel. A little tip you can use when rolling out those meatballs as well, just get a little bowl of water. If you dip your fingers in it and rub on your hands, just so your hands are slightly moist, you won't have any of the meat stick to your hand. It makes it nice and clean. So I've added in all of my fennel that I'm going to use, my onion that I'm going to use, and then sauteed that off for about 10 minutes till it was nice and translucent, and then added my red wine. Now I've got about 350 mils of red wine, which I'm going to reduce down to about 175, so about half of the amount. So that'll take probably 5 to 10 minutes to reduce that down. I added in some brown sugar. So red wine is acidic, and especially when you reduce it, it can take on an almost astringent flavour because of that acid. So adding a little bit of, normally if you're making a red wine sauce, you'll add port, but if you add a little bit of brown sugar, it'll help sweeten that wine up. So we're going to reduce that probably another couple of minutes, and then we can add in our tomato. I've got a few other little things to go on top of that. So tomato paste will go in first, and we'll cook that out. Then our passata, which is here, chili and rosemary. And then, like I said, it's a matter of however long you can give that to simmer away, the more flavour you'll add to it. Now, if it gets a little bit too thick, so you've reduced it down too much, I've got some chicken stock here that I can add on top and keep simmering. So you can get 3.5 hours out of this dish if you want to, and then it becomes really rich in flavour. That's getting very close. I reckon 2 more minutes and I can add in that tomato. You can, like I said, if you transfer this to an oven-safe dish, you can also put it in the oven. So just put the lid on, turn the oven up to about 120, 140, and just let it sit in there for 3 hours. Remember, with the lid on, you probably won't need to add too much stock, but just keep checking every hour or so to make sure you have got enough moisture in there for the dish to do what it needs to do and extract those flavours. All right, give that one more little stir. The one thing I also need to add, tomatoes, tomato passata, tinned tomatoes, tomato sauce, love salt, and it needs salt. If you don't add salt to it, that's where it takes on again that almost astringent, acidic sort of flavour. You add that salt and that calms it down quite a bit. All right, so tomato paste, it's just a couple of tablespoons. It'll just help, again, add that richness to the dish. Stir that in, cook that out. So allow this to reduce again with that tomato paste in there until you get it simmering with lots of little bubbles. And then you can add in your passata and remember your salt. I've allowed that to simmer for the length of time that I've cooked my pasta as well. Pasta, I gave a rinse under some running water. It's because of the starch that ends up on the outside of the pasta and in the pasta water. If you don't do that, the pasta will clump together. So give it a little rinse under the tap and wash off that starch. It makes it a lot easier to work with. We'll spoon some of our penne. I'm using a short pasta, which I think is best for this kind of dish. So we've got this really rich red sauce now. You can see how that's reduced right down. Now, I didn't add any stock to that. It's just purely that red wine and that tomato passata. I'll spoon some of our meatballs on. I think I ended up with probably 16 to 18 of the meatballs, and that's a really rich red sauce to go with it. Like I said, the longer you cook it, the more intense it will get if you keep adding that stock on top. So if you've got a good 3 to 4 hours, allow that time and keep adding that stock and keep reducing that sauce down. You'll really find there is a big difference between cooking it for 45 minutes, which is what we've done here, and allowing that 4 hours to really cook it out. The meatballs actually become really tender as well as they cook for a lot longer. But for a dish that's been put together in 45 minutes, it's still nice and rich. You're still going to enjoy it. But if you have 4 hours, allow 4 hours. Now we're off to Saffire on the east coast of Tasmania for an amazing experience learning about apiary and tasting some local honey. So Rob, how often do you go out on this little beekeeping adventure from Saffire?
Yeah, a couple of times a week. Tuesday, Thursdays and Saturday.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a nice afternoon tour. It's great to hang out in the environment and actually see how these bees work the environment, but also produce a honey that Chef loves.
And what would you taste in a typical sort of Saffire or this kind of area of the Freycinet National Park? What are the normal flavours and flowers that you're going to be able to pick up?
Yeah, well, this area is very unique. There's a floral variety known as Kunzia ambigua, which is not often found, and that flowers around this time of year, around October to December, and also the common tea tree, the Leptospermum scoparium, as well as many wildflowers. There's over 500 species of plant identified in this region, so here the honey is very complex with sort of intense flavours.
And why are bees so important?
Well, the bees that I have that I'm going to show you today are European honeybees.
Yep.
And they are an integral part in our agricultural system. They are this keystone insect that we rely heavily for the food that you eat here at Saffire and around the world. So they are the pollinators. And
you were saying before that you get a real good understanding of the natural terroir of the environment by eating the honey?
Yes, because these bees are gathering all the nectar and all the pollen from 3 to 5 kilometres around this area, and they're literally preserving it into a honey, which is then used by Chef here and to give you a good representation of the terroir of Saffire.
Great, well, I'm looking forward to it. I hope that you're going to protect me.
Yes, so do I. Yeah.
All right.
I'll show you what the bees are doing in the hive.
Yep.
And then we'll taste the preserved nectar. Yeah.
All right, let's go.
So the suit is literally a onesie.
Right.
It rolls out from the hood, like so. And it's all one piece. You have the big zip at the front. And what you need to do, you need to take your shoes off. And then step into these suits, like so. These bees that I have are Italian, and they're super calm.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah, I've heard that.
they
I've heard they're really calm.
yeah, they are. They actually they don't mind us hanging out with them, and they know me. So as long as you're with me, you'll be right. Now here are the hives here. I'm just going to give these guys a quick little puff up here. Take this off.
Here.
Now, if you puff a little bit of smoke in underneath there. So if you puff under here, perfect, that's enough. Now I'll show you something. What we'll do really quick is we'll pull a frame out.
Wow, look at that.
And in this frame, on the outside here, you see underneath here there's honey. So basically when the bees, when they reduce all the moisture in this nectar, they put a wax capping over the top of it, and that's where you get your honey from. So, all right, got that smoker cranking. But here, this is what you want. This frame here. It is packed. So on the outside, but probably less smoke on this now, I reckon we're all right.
Good.
There's the honey on the outside here that they've put a capping over the top of.
Yep.
On the inside, that's where all the babies are. So that underneath those little brown cappings, there's baby bees.
Oh, right.
Perfect. And you can bring that up and have a close look with the suits. It's quite amazing. There's so many bees on there.
Wow.
And they're all doing their thing, and they are so calm. These are beautiful Italians, super calm.
Got it?
Yep, perfect. Let's go and have a taste. Rightio. So these three honeys are from totally different regions, and the Fun scale helps you identify the flavours and aromas from the honey. So the Fun scale was brought about to put honey into categories, and it's split into 7 different categories from water white to dark amber. And the lighter the colour of the honey, like this one from Strathgordon, is a more fruitier, citrusy honey flavour.
Yep.
And the darker the colour of the honey, like from here, is a more bolder, earthier flavour. So it's like there's a lot of rainfall down Strathgordon. It's this beautiful temperate rainforest. Couldn't be far more different than the mild east coast here at Saffire. But it's this plant which is endemic to Tasmania that grows there called Eucryphilus cider.
Whoa.
And it's the common name for this flora is leatherwood. So it's such a unique flora. You can only get it here in Tassie. Now the best honey to try, which pairs so well with cheese, is actually honey from the comb. Tutcombe honey is straight from the hive, and just this beautiful honeycomb, beautiful wax, and these little cells of they're basically like these little moments in time.
After learning so much about East Coast bees, we're going to use a little bit of honey in this recipe, Blue Hills honey. So good Tasmanian honey from just here, well, very close to where we are here in Sprayton. I'm going to make a pork fillet with a dressing to go on top. The first thing I will do is get my rice on, because by the time the rice cooks, everything else will pretty much be done. So I'm going to need about a cup of rice, enough water. Now there's probably, in the bottom of that pot, there's probably 3 centimetres of rice. So I want to put about 6 centimetres in. So I just want to make sure it's well covered. All right, so that rice will take about 12 to 15 minutes to cook to be nice and light and fluffy, and then we're going to rinse it. So while all that happens, I'll start to get my dressing ready. Now in my dressing, garlic, ginger, some honey, some sugar, some sesame oil, some soy sauce and some fish sauce, and then green chilli, lime juice, honey, I said, and a little pinch of salt. We're going to bring all that together again in another little pot. Let it simmer for a little bit to extract the flavour that we can get out of the ginger and the garlic, and then just turn it off and let it sit. And the longer it sits and steeps, the more of those flavours it will take on. I've just turned the heat off on my sauce, and I want to add some chili now. That sauce can just sit there now and be ready to go on top of our fillet, our little salad. We've got things that are going to soak up this dressing. Some kale, same sort of thing. The curly parts of the end of the kale leaves are really good for soaking up sauces and dressings. And then once I'm done with this, I'm just going to shred some coriander as well. And that'll be our salad done. I'm actually going to put some fresh coriander in the sauce as well once it's cooled down a little bit. So I want a little, probably quarter of a bunch of coriander to go in our salad. Just roughly chopped. Alrighty, time for our pork. So I'll cut the fillet in half. Want to get my pan nice and hot. Want to get some real good colour on the outside of this, all around the outside of this. So I'm going to be turning it quite a bit. So we'll heat this pan up nice and hot. A little bit of olive oil. I'm going to put olive oil on my pork and not in my pan. That way I can allow the pan to get really, really hot without smoking my olive oil, because olive oil has a lower smoking point than animal fat or vegetable oil or grapeseed oil. So we're going to allow that to get nice and hot, then pop our already oiled pork in and cook it for about 6 minutes so we get some colour all around the outside. I finished off my pork fillet in the oven for about 5 minutes at 180, took it out and I've allowed it to rest for about 5 minutes. So I'll just cut it now. And so you can see it's still nice and moist. It's got a little bit of a pink blush to it, which is what you want, but you can see that it's nice and set. There's no gelatinous part in that pork. So it's still going to be nice and moist, which is the important thing when you're cooking with such a lean piece of meat. So now I can get everything ready. So my rice, it's going to go down first because everything's going to seep through the pork, through all of the salad, and then it's going to end up being soaked up by the rice at the bottom, that dressing. So and you're looking at probably the amount for one portion. So about that much rice is probably right for one portion, considering that we're going to be putting some salad on top. So some of our cabbage, some of our kale, and some of our coriander. And then I'll cut my pork fillet. I'm really happy with. You just feel how soft it is in your hand when you go to pick it up. So I'm super, super, super happy with how that's cooked. Pork loves salt, so a little bit of salt on top of our pork. And now our dressing. So all of this massive flavour bomb we've got in here, we get to spoon that all over the top. So there we go. That's my pork fillet with, I'm trying to think of a really good way to explain the salad. So I'm gonna go pork fillet with soak up salad and rice.